We didn't find him until the next morning, curled up quietly in the closet, like he'd been there the whole time. We had just gotten back from a weekend at my sister's cabin in Vermont. It was supposed to be one of those low-effort trips, relaxing. No phones, no plans, just fresh air, bad board games, and good coffee. Eric and I got home around 10:30 Sunday night. The house was dark. Max, our dog, greeted us at the door, like always. Everything felt normal. You know that comfort you feel returning home after a trip. That sigh of relief when you drop your bags, kick off your shoes, and know your own bed is waiting. That's how it started. We didn't unpack right away. Just left our duffel bags near the entryway. Max wasn't acting weird. No barking, no pacing. If anything, he seemed tired too. We did a quick sweep, windows closed, doors locked, then started getting ready for bed. That's when I noticed it. This faint, strange smell in the hallway near the guest room. Not strong, just off, a mixture of sweat and something sour. Almost like a gym bag left too long in a hot car. I mentioned it to Eric, who checked around, opened the guest room, peeked in the bathroom but didn't find anything. We figured maybe Max had tracked in something weird, or maybe it was just stale air from the house being shut up all weekend. So, we brushed our teeth, turned in, and fell asleep fast. But Max woke us up around 3 a.m. He was whining. Not barking, just this soft, persistent whine at the bedroom door. I sat up groggily and opened it. Max didn't run out. He just stood there, staring down the hallway, ears stiff, tail down. Eric called his name, but Max didn't move. He just stayed locked onto something we couldn't see. We both laughed up, little nervous laughs, like parents trying to explain away a child's nightmare. I bent down to pet him, whispering it was okay, just the house settling. He eventually trotted back in and curled up at the foot of the bed. We went back to sleep, but I didn't sleep well. The air felt heavier, like the silence wasn't empty. The next morning, I got up first. Eric was still asleep. Max stretched beside him. I threw on a robe, padded down the hallway to the kitchen. The house was quiet. I filled the kettle and stood by the window, watching the sun light up the backyard. Then I heard a soft bump from the hallway behind me. Not loud, just a thump, like something shifting. I assumed it was Eric. I called out, "You up?" His voice came back, muffled from the bedroom, still in bed. I froze. The bump had come from the hallway, not the bedroom. I walked toward the sound slowly. The guest room door was ajar, but the room was empty. Then I noticed the hallway. Closet, the one next to the linen cabinet. The door was shut. That's when I knew it's hard to explain the exact moment fear becomes real. It's like a drop in your chest, a silence that presses in. I reached for the knob and hesitated. Then, slowly, I opened the door. He was crouched between coats and jackets, knees to chest, eyes wide, hands pressed to the floor. A man, pale, dirty, hair matted down, like he hadn't bathed in days. He didn't move, just stared up at me. I remember thinking how still he was, how quiet. I screamed, loud and raw. Eric came running down the hall, and the man moved, then darted past me, down the hall, and out the front door. We hadn't heard it open. We hadn't heard it unlock. The door had been closed when we went to bed. I was sure of it. We called the police, of course. They came, quickly took statements, swept the house, walked the property. The man was gone, vanished, but they found signs, muddy footprints leading from the garage. A screwdriver dropped near the side entrance. He must have slipped in while we were unpacking, while the garage was still open. The closet had been disturbed, jackets shifted, a pillow from the guest room crammed in the corner. He had a small duffel bag hidden behind the vacuum cleaner. Inside, half a granola bar, 2 bottles of water, a flashlight, and a knife. It wasn't long, maybe 10 inches, fixed blade, the kind you see in survival kits. Clean, no blood, just wrapped in an old towel. They said he was likely an escapee from a nearby halfway house. Someone with a long history of psychiatric issues and no permanent address. He'd slipped away 3 nights before and was last seen walking toward our part of town. What still haunts me isn't the fact that he was there, it's that we lived around him, walked past him, slept with him a few feet down the hall. That Max knew that I smelled something off and shrugged it away. That a man sat in the dark, listening, waiting, breathing just behind a wooden door. He didn't hurt us. He didn't steal. Maybe he didn't even plan to. Maybe we were just warmth, shelter. But that knife tells me otherwise. We changed the locks, installed a security system, got motion lights, door sensors, even a camera for the garage. But I haven't felt truly safe in my own home since, because now I know what it feels like to share your home with someone you never invited in. She never moved in officially, but for 2 nights she lived inside our walls. It started like something normal. Mark and I had just finished our 2nd year of grad school, living in a 3-bedroom rental near campus. Rent was high, and neither of us used the 3rd room, so we figured we'd try to get a roommate, someone quiet, chill, just enough rent relief to make life a bit easier. We listed the room online and got a handful of responses. Most were weird or flaky. But then Kayla messaged, said she'd just moved to town, needed a short-term place, and was willing to pay a couple months up front. She came by that Friday afternoon to look at the room. Early 20s, thin frame, messy blonde hair tucked under a hoodie. She didn't talk much, but there was something calm about her. She seemed shy but not sketchy. We told her she could move in over the weekend. She said great, shook our hands, and left with a faint smile. She never came back. We waited around Saturday, thinking maybe something came up. By Sunday night, I texted her, no reply, no call, nothing. We figured she found another spot and just ghosted us. Annoying, but not unusual, except little things started happening. Monday night, I came home from class and noticed dishes in the sink. Just 2, a spoon and a coffee mug. I hadn't touched them. Colin swore he hadn't either. We chalked it up to memory lapses. Maybe we'd been in a rush that morning, whatever. But then it was muddy footprints in the hallway, faint but fresh, like someone had walked in from the backyard, up the carpeted stairs, and into the spare room. The door was still closed, lights off. The room was empty. Nothing inside but the bare mattress. That's when Colin started getting twitchy. Tuesday morning, he asked if I'd been up during the night. Said he heard someone moving around 2 or 3 a.m., soft footsteps upstairs, like someone pacing. I told him no. I'd been asleep. He looked pale, like he hadn't rested. I brushed it off. Old house, thin walls. Could have been anything. But that night, I heard it too. Not just creaks, movement. Someone walking slow, deliberate, across the ceiling from one side of the house to the other. It wasn't an animal. You could hear the weight in the boards. Was awake, sitting on the couch, staring up at the ceiling like he'd been doing it for hours. "I think someone's in the attic," he muttered. I didn't want to believe it, but he wasn't the type to panic. So we grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. There was a fold-down hatch in the garage ceiling, an old pull-string setup. When I tugged it open, the ladder came down stiff. Dust fell. I climbed up first, heart thudding in my chest. The attic wasn't big. Low beams, tight space. It smelled like insulation and mildew, and it wasn't empty. On the far side, tucked behind one of the beams, was a roll-up mattress, thin, like the kind you'd keep in a trunk. Next to it, a canvas tote bag, clothes, a toothbrush, a bag of trail mix, half-eaten. And sitting on top of it all was a flip phone, old, scratched, but powered on. I opened the photos folder. There were pictures of our living room from strange angles, like someone had taken them through the vent. One from above the staircase, another of the fridge, open, one of Colin, watching TV. None of these were from our phones. We never saw or heard anyone. And the attic had no lock, no latch from the outside, which meant whoever was up there had been moving freely. She must have come back, or maybe she never left after the showing. We backed out fast, locked the hatch, and called the police. They came in under 10 minutes, searched the attic, took statements, but by the time they got there, everything was gone. No mattress, no bag, no phone, not even the trail mix. We hadn't heard anyone leave. The front and back doors were locked, windows sealed. She was just gone. They said there was no sign of forced entry, nothing they could pursue legally. We changed the locks the next day, bought a padlock for the attic hatch, slept with lights on for a week straight, but it stuck with us. The idea that someone could be so quiet, so invisible, and so close. A week later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "Sorry it didn't work out. Nice place though." No name, no photo, no trace. When I tried to search the number, I blocked it immediately. But every time I walk down that hallway, I glance up at the ceiling, at the spot where she curled up, silent, while we lived just beneath her, laughing, eating, sleeping. She never moved in officially, but she stayed long enough to learn how we lived. I turned off the kitchen light before bed, so why was it on again at 2 a.m.? It had been a long week, work deadlines, school meetings, and just the general exhaustion that comes from being a single mom trying to keep everything together. By Friday night, I was barely holding my eyes open on the couch. I stayed up a little later than usual, just watching some mindless drama on Netflix, something to take the edge off. Around 11:30, I got up, did my rounds, like I always do, locked the front door, made sure the windows were latched, checked on my son, Mason. He was curled up, sound asleep, still hugging that tattered old stuffed wolf he's had since he was 4. I turned off the kitchen light, the hallway lamp, the living room switch, all dark. And then I went to bed. At some point in the night, I think it was just after 2, I woke up, not to a sound, really, but to a feeling. Something pulled me out of sleep. I stared at the ceiling in the dark for a moment, then noticed the glow, soft, yellow-white light leaking from beneath my bedroom door. The kitchen light, it was back on. I sat up slowly, listening. No footsteps, no TV, no running water. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the light buzzing in the hall. Mason. Maybe he got up for a snack. I padded out of bed, opened the door carefully. His bedroom door across the hall was shut tight. The kitchen looked normal, nothing out of place. No wrappers, no dishes in the sink, no signs of life. But the light was definitely on. I turned it off again, checked Mason's room, just to be sure. He was fast asleep, same position as before. I told myself I must have imagined switching it off the first time. Just stress. Foggy memory. I went back to bed and tried to let it go, but it happened again the next night. This time, I was more alert. I hadn't been asleep long. Again, around 2 a.m., the light was on, but when I stepped into the kitchen, something made me pause. The back door was unlocked. Now, that door sticks. You really have to push to get it shut all the way, and I remembered clearly hearing the click of the lock when I did my routine earlier that night. But there it was, slightly ajar, just enough to let in the chill. I didn't sleep much after that the next day. I drove straight to Target after work and picked up one of those indoor camera monitors, just a basic plug-in model with night vision. I installed it discreetly on a shelf above the stove, facing the island and the back door. I didn't tell Mason, didn't want to spook him. I just needed to know what was going on. That night, I went to bed wired. Every creak made me flinch. Every shadow felt too dark. Still, nothing seemed to happen. I made sure the doors were locked, lights off, and tried to get some rest in the morning. I reviewed the footage. At exactly 2:03 a.m., the kitchen light flicked on. There was no one visible at first, just an empty kitchen. The camera sat in eerie silence, and then movement. It was subtle, barely there, but in the lower left corner of the frame, something shifted. A blur of motion behind the kitchen island, something low, like someone ducking. I froze the video and dragged the cursor frame by frame. Their figure thin, hunched, moving slowly from one side of the island to the other. I paused the screen on what I could make out. A pale hand reaching up, fingertips brushing the counter, then gone. I called the police. They arrived within 20 minutes. I showed them the footage, shaky hands and all. We searched the house, every closet, every crawl space, every locked door and shadowed corner. Nothing. Then one of the officers checked the basement window, the old one behind the washer that hadn't been opened in years. There was a crack in the lock, small, barely noticeable, but enough. The outside had dirt streaks and faint smudges like fingers. The officer said it looked like someone had been using that window to slip in and out. They dusted for prints, but everything came back smudged, nothing usable, nothing to ID. That night, I packed a bag for Mason and me and went to stay at my sister's house across town. I couldn't sleep, not just from fear, but from the sheer violation of it. Someone had been in my home, moving around while we slept, watching us. The next day, locksmiths came and replaced every lock, basement, back door, windows, you name it. I ordered a full security system online, cameras, motion detectors, all of it. But I kept thinking about the footage. Something nagged at me, a detail I hadn't caught in the panic. So I went back and watched it again, closely this time. Not just when the figure moved, but the time before that. The part where nothing seemed to happen. That's when I saw it. The figure hadn't entered the kitchen. It hadn't come from the basement stairs. It hadn't opened a door. It had already been there. If you looked close enough, you could make out a shape in the dark, crouched motionless behind the island, waiting for hours. At 12:15 a.m., the living room camera showed me walking into the kitchen to pour a glass of water. The figure didn't move. At 12:32, Mason used the bathroom down the hall. Still no movement. For at least 3 hours. Only when the house was silent, when the world around it was deep in sleep, then it moved. Then it walked toward the door. Then it touched the counter. Then it turned on the light, like it wanted to be noticed. We never found out who it was. The police suspected a squatter. Maybe someone who'd been living in the crawlspace or slipping in and out over weeks, maybe longer. But I don't buy that the way it moved, the way it waited. That wasn't survival. It was something else. We still live in the same house, with cameras now in every room, but I haven't looked at the basement window since, because sometimes I get the feeling the light's about to turn on again.